Satoru Gojo versus the Wheel of Dharma. So you guys already know how it looks. Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curses himself, decided to use the 10 sacred treasures technique and spin the Wheel of Dharma to adapt to Gojo. There is so much at stake with Gojo's life, it should have been a certainty that Sukuna was going to use every tool in his bag, including a perfect counter to Limitless being the 10 shadows technique to counter Gojo. He'd really be crazy not to. Now, does this mean that Prime, Heian Sukuna with his original curse technique alone is weaker than Gojo? I don't know, that might not be the case, but if Sukuna had a technique or a curse tool that could deal with Gojo, why wouldn't he use it already? But I think 10 Shadows will give Sukuna a matchup advantage. Now, I'll guess before the leaks, but what is happening now to Gojo? I won't disregard poison as an option, but I really think Gojo is very exhausted after abusing his 6 Eyes ability. This has been hinted a number of times by his peers like Ino and Yuta. Gojo is doing things that are absolutely and extremely overwhelming. Max output of reverse curse technique after domains, back-to-back simple domain, falling blossom emotion, curse technique reversal, using reverse curse to replenish his own curse technique after 3 domain expansions. Think about that, 3 consecutive domain expansions. And all the while, Gojo is using his 6 Eyes to maintain his cursed energy level and control and keep up his Limitless to fight Sukuna. That is a lot, and it is confirmed in the fan book. Unrestricted use of the 6 Eyes will make Gojo tired. Even when he himself can heal his brain with reverse curse technique, apparently he can still get exhausted, and that's what I think happens at the end of chapter 228. So now that Sukuna is utilizing the wheel, is it enough to fight Gojo? Oh hell yeah, it is. I do not doubt that Gojo would kind of just fold Mahoraga. Even Gojo thinks he'd literally one-shot it, but Mahoraga is like nothing that we have seen. Adapting to any and all phenomena is straight up broken to the highest degree, and because it's not just limited to curse techniques, it's the nature of the very attack. If it slashes, it adapts. If it burns, it will adapt. If it uses a particular element, it will adapt. The fanbook says it analyzes enemy attacks in order to gain resistance and land effective hits. So not only will it start to become more resilient, but it will also be able to land effective hits. Of course, a drawback is that it will be defeated when it gets hit by a new attack that it cannot adapt to. For how it can land effective hits, that's literally how Mahoraga invaded Yorozu's domain and straight up broke Perfect Sphere. Even though Perfect Sphere is scientifically untouchable from a physical point of view, Mahoraga literally did not care because it was still made out of liquid metal, so it easily overcame her technique and one-shot her in her own domain no less. Because Yorozu's attacks were so repetitive, Sukuna says, I've already adapted to it. So perhaps a complex curse technique like Limitless will be quite a bit harder to adjust to, and I think the adaptation also applies to the user of the wheel as well, so maybe Sukuna can gain resistance just like Mahoraga can, since Sukuna says, I adapted, not Mahoraga adapted, even though of course Mahoraga had the wheel, so he indeed did adapt. So if Sukuna had the wheel hiding in his shadow this whole time, then what's very likely is that every time Sukuna got hit by Limitless, you know, the 200% hollow purple, interacting with infinity, and getting slammed by red, the Dharma was probably analyzing the attacks, and now that the wheel has spun, Sukuna will actually become a lethal threat outside of domain expansion. Angel mentioned that if Sukuna has a way to bypass infinity or defeat the Limitless other than amplification, then Gojo will lose. Obviously, we don't know what Sukuna's Mizushi Shrine curse technique is or why Sukuna refrains from using it, but let's say Sukuna has weapons, curse techniques, even the weapon Yorozu gave him, and he could manipulate things like fire, lightning, and of course uses dismantle and cleave, whatever he pulls out. No matter how strong Sukuna's technique is on its own, it has to get past infinity first, and it has to be effective enough against Gojo. But unless Sukuna uses maybe poison or domain expansion or domain amplification, he probably would need a better way to fight Gojo. Even Gojo considers Sukuna is very stubborn because Ten Shadows would be the most obvious and perfect technique to use against him. Yet he just keeps using cleave and dismantle, even though he has other techniques on his own. Until suddenly, Sukuna does use the wheel, and now he will effectively have a better way to fight Gojo outside of domains. And who knows what Maharaga or the Wheel of Dharma would give Sukuna, maybe even counter Gojo's infinite void if domains came into play. I'm in the camp that believes Sukuna is strong enough to defeat Gojo when he keeps running down Gojo's options. Ten Shadows would just be an outlet for Sukuna to effectively harm Gojo, for the most part without considering domains. It's interesting that they are more equal during standard Jujutsu combat, because Gojo would always have infinity as a crutch, and Sukuna can use domain amplification and his own innate technique to attack Gojo with buildings or the environment. At the same time, that also questions why would Sukuna need to use buildings if he has techniques that could work against Gojo. A simple answer would be that whatever Sukuna has, it may not be able to deal with infinity properly. Otherwise, there's not really a point in using Ten Shadows or the Dharma Chakra. There's no real reason to risk taking all this damage or hiding his true curse technique if he already had a solution or a surefire way to kill Gojo. So A, Sukuna is absolutely trolling, which I find unlikely considering the depth of this fight, or B, Sukuna needs Ten Shadows to effectively adapt to Gojo and kill him. Whatever Sukuna was doing before, with holding back his own innate technique, is not necessarily enough for Gojo. He probably is going to reveal his hidden shrine curse technique, and most obviously he will need to find a way around infinity, which shouldn't be too hard considering the Maharaga adaptation wheel, and maybe even Gojo's exhaustion could factor into that. But we will see with the leaks how Gojo responds. This truly is the moment that we see Gojo in one of the toughest spots in his life with everything against him. So comment below, will Gojo get stronger and overcome the 10 Shadows technique? I think Gojo will at least manage, or do you guys think that this is where it goes downhill for Satoru Gojo? Though I will remind you, this is the Satoru Gojo we're talking about. The strongest of the modern era will definitely leave his mark on the strongest in history. But that's it for this one, guys. I'll definitely do a live stream reaction for when the leaks drop, so look out for that. This has been Enemy Stand User, and I'll see you awesome brothers and sisters in the next one. Bye-bye.